Welcome to the Grounded Guidance Podcast, where we explore the power of living aligned and from your intuition each day. I'm your host, Karen Williams. Every day you receive hundreds of intuitive messages guiding and empowering you to live a life in alignment. Are you listening? Through lived experiences, ongoing self-reflection, and enriching stories, I am joined by extraordinary people and thought leaders in their field who have embraced the magic of following their intuition and are sharing their light with the world. Trust that these conversations will meet you right where you are, and consider this your nudge from the universe to listen. Join us. Well, hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome, Amanda. I am excited to welcome Amanda Blau. Is that right?
That's it. You did it.
Oh, I did. Okay, good. Well, first try. I'm so excited. Okay. Amanda is a soul alignment coach. This is going to be such a fun conversation. She helps men and women who feel like something is missing in their life embrace what is truly calling them and create the life of their dreams. She works with a combination of one-on-one coaching psychology, Reiki energy work, somatic breath work, psychic reading, and most recently, transchanneling to bring forward messages from your higher self. Her mission statement with her work and life is helping each and every soul learn to feel more love for themselves and others so they can tap into their unlimited potential and create the life of their dreams. I mean, that's pretty powerful. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you so much for having me. I am really looking forward into diving into all of this with you and exploring what we can come up with today through this conversation.
Oh, yes. It's going to be great. I look forward to it. Let's start just kind of at the beginning of your journey, and then we'll dive in. So for the viewers or the listeners that are listening in, Amanda and I did a higher self trance channeling about a week ago, and we'll dive into kind of what that looks like. But I'd love to first start with Amanda and telling us your story and what led you to this moment right here, because I know you have a fascinating backstory.
A very long and winding journey, but I will give you the very abbreviated version. This was never a part of my life growing up. I had no frame of reference for anything spiritual. I didn't believe in anything, really. I would consider myself to be an atheist. But in September 2019, I was working in the fitness field as a personal trainer and nutrition coach, and I decided to start my own business and open up my own gym. And I did it, and I was doing the thing for the first time in my life, working for myself, feeling really empowered, and something didn't feel right about it, and I was trying to ignore that feeling, hoping it would go away. And then March 2020 happened, worldwide pandemic, and I had to shut down my brand new business. And I was closed for 5 months. And I was dreading going back to work. And that's not a great place to be when you're a brand new business owner. And so I had to look really, really hard at that. And I had the time and the space to do it. And so I was met with a lot of anxiety about that. Like, this is all I've ever done and all I've ever known. I can't just do something else. I'm not trained in anything else. I don't have any other skills. And so as I was dealing with that, I experienced a lot of other synchronicities in my life where I was driving one day listening to a podcast, and one of the podcasters mentioned that she believes in reincarnation because of the book Many Lives, Many Masters. And something just clicked in my head, and I said, I have to read that book. So I was starting to explore my spirituality on one side, and on the other side, I was exploring, kind of going through this dark night of the soul, trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And over the course of the last 2 to 3 years, they've kind of converged and into what I'm doing now, but it's been a very gradual process of self-exploration and self-trust.
Wow. I really hear a lot about listening in your journey, right? I think it's important to recognize that those feelings and thoughts and little trickles of information come up for everybody. But are you willing and ready to listen? And I hear from you that you were ready to listen, because there was a lot of emotions coming up, the anxiety about returning to something that you had created, but you really didn't want to find space for it in your life anymore. So that's amazing that you found your way to something different by listening?
I think that the reason why we don't listen
Mm,
is because we're afraid of what we might uncover if we do. And there's a lot of probably unconscious thoughts and belief systems and shame and judgment around what happens if I uncover something I don't like.
mhm,
And what am I going to do with that? What is that going to mean about me? And if I realize and I come to terms with my own discomfort and my own unhappiness, what if I can't change it? What if I try and I fail? What if I get burnt out? What if I lose everything? What are people going to say about me? And
mhm,
so rather than sitting with the, what could happen that could be of benefit to me, like how could my life look in a better way, we tend to focus on the things that we fear more than the things that we desire. And
mm,
that's where sitting with your own truth becomes something that we avoid doing. And
mm,
so being able to just take a moment and ask yourself, how do I really feel right now? And what do I really want right now without the judgment is difficult to do, but that's really the answer towards creating the transformation that you're looking for.
yeah, there's a lot there,
Yeah.
because there's a lot there. I mean, it is amazing because it feels like you kind of fast tracked what happens with a lot of people over the course of a lifetime, right? Really being able to face yourself without judgment. Maybe you grew up in a household that was very judgmental. Maybe you have people in your life all around you that don't support who you are or how you show up in the world. There's a lot of fear and stigma and judgment. So I think that's really powerful that in that short period of time you were able to shift that. I want to take a step back because you mentioned Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss. How is that a catalyst for you? I'm curious about this because that's a real powerful book if you have not read it, and it really does open up your eyes to the world that we exist here now, in the future, in the past, and on many different planes of consciousness. So I'm curious what that was for you.
Yeah. Growing up, the idea of reincarnation really appealed to me as a child,
Hmm.
just because there's something less scary about it, right?
Hmm.
Knowing that it doesn't all end after this one lifetime and that it goes on. It there's something oddly comforting in that.
Hmm.
And I didn't allow myself as a teenager to buy into that belief. Um, I think that I wanted to be right, and to me, science felt right. There was something safe about knowing that I had the facts and concrete evidence to one thing, and that there was no evidence to this other thing. Even though it felt better to believe in it, I didn't fully allow myself to, because if I couldn't fully trust in it, there was something oddly uncomfortable about that. And so when this book found me, it found me when I was in a very different place in my life. I was going through a personal transition that was very uncomfortable. And I had also had a friend that had recently died from brain cancer. And
Hmm.
so I think I was just in a mental and emotional space where I was a lot more open to
Hmm.
other interpretations of life, reality, and the universe and everything. And I read the book. And I think that the fact that the author was a doctor
Hmm.
really appealed to that scientific part of my brain. And I was also getting all these synchronicities in all these other places of my life too, where that I think I wasn't open to seeing them before,
Hmm.
where other people were mentioning spiritual concepts and I just never heard them before. And all of a sudden I was hearing them in all these different places. And something that I've come to realize is that the mind is actually not that intelligent.
Hmm.
When we don't have all of the information, the mind likes to fill in the blanks
Hmm.
with proof from our past and
Yeah, I
project that
agree.
into the future, right?
Yes.
And so all you have to do is look for evidence to support the thought. And your mind can easily jump from one thought to another as long as you can find evidence to support it. And I started looking for evidence to support that this could be true, that reincarnation could be true.
Mm.
And I started to see all of these mediums, and they all seemed to be talking about the same thing. And then I started to see all of these near death experience stories, and they all seemed to have similarities and synchronicities to them. And so I started thinking, like, how could all of these people from different walks of life have the same things to say? And that's how I sort of started to put the pieces together for myself. And then I started to have my own experiences, which
Oh,
added to
wow.
that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Um, I could talk a whole episode on this, but I'm curious. Have you, based on your belief system and where you were maybe growing up, the thought of reincarnation was also very curious. It was very curious for me as a child as well, and I think it was the comfort in death. What I believe now is death is a doorway. It's a portal to, another space and time, not the end. But it's interesting that I also had the same experience. Reincarnation was a doorway for me that opened up to something that really was a big growth opportunity for my own life. But I'm curious about um, how reincarnation. Have you experienced anything in your own life with past lives without getting too deep? Have you been able to tap into any of your past lives that have helped you understand your path maybe in this life?
Yeah. Such a beautiful question. A few, I could answer this a few different ways. So, one of the very first times that I consciously tried to communicate with my spirit guides, I was lying in bed and I just said, fine, if you're there, if you're real, show me a past life. I dare you.
Wow.
And it took a few minutes, but I started to see visuals of something I didn't recognize. And then it stopped. And I said, fine, show me another one. And a few minutes went by, and then I started to see visuals of something else. And I was like, oh, there's like a communication happening here. This is very interesting. And so over time, I started to take some psychic development courses and I learned some mediumship and was able to communicate for myself with loved ones on the other side.
Mhm.
And then I started exploring the Akashic records and, you know, understanding my soul's journey through time and what that looks like and what that could look like. Um, and so I've explored it in a few different ways, but it's endlessly fascinating to me, and I've
Yes.
enjoyed every minute of it. Yeah.
Yes, it is to me too. In all the lives that I've tapped into, and all of them are so different. It actually has been it's been the work that has helped me um, move through so many different timelines so quickly, accessing these past lives that have um, maybe been stopping points along my human journey in that lifetime. It's just they transcend time and space when you can tap into them and heal parts of yourself that maybe were left open in that timeline. So, oh, fascinating. Thank you for jumping
Yeah.
there with me. So, there's a lot of people that live in this fear-based reality, right? They live out of alignment. They live based on what society tells them they should do. I'm going to grow up and I'm going to get a 4-year degree and I'm going to drive this car and I'm going to um, have this white picket fence and I'm going to get married by this time. It just goes on and on and on. People are really scared to show up as authentic and true, because being seen in all of who you are with all your gifts is scary, and I can speak from experience. But how do you help people shift the narrative, and start living a life in alignment? That's a really big question, but I think it's important to touch on because I think a lot of people live their life there.
Yeah. Well, what I would like to start by saying is that it's only scary if you're already in judgment of it. Other people's thoughts and opinions about you don't affect you. Your opinions about other people's thoughts and opinions affect you. So it is your own judgment or shame that you're holding over yourself about who you are and where you are, or certain aspects of who you are, that are creating your experience. And so if you're afraid of opening up to your full potential, it's because you're buying into an unconscious belief system that there's pain associated with that. And that's really where the work begins, is uncovering, what am I really afraid of? And how is that holding me back from what I really want, which is to be free from that? And
Mm.
so to me, the journey is uncovering the truth, which is that the darkness is an illusion. It's the illusion of your own perception of who you are. And when you can see through the illusion, then you see that there is only light and that all is welcome. Yes, I'm having an experience that my society doesn't deem to be acceptable, right? Maybe I failed at something and I'm ashamed of that. Well, can that be okay that I failed at something? Can I allow myself to have this experience and for that to be okay? Do I have to hide it and suppress it? And it's really like, who are you really hiding it from? You're hiding it from the part of you that doesn't feel like that is the experience you should be having, because you were taught that certain experiences are good and certain experiences are not good. And so when you can let go of those narratives and just al- allow who and where you are to be enough,
Mm.
then you see that all is welcome, and it kind of frees you up to explore where you might be holding yourself back otherwise.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention the duality. We have these such strong emotions around, and feelings and ingrained patterns around, um, well, they don't vote the same way that I do, or I failed at that, I will never be good at this. What if the idea is, I failed at this, but I learned something from it, or they don't vote the same way as I do, and that's okay. They still are entitled to be the human they are, and holding two opposing feelings and being okay showing up in the world. We don't have to live in this duality that expresses the worst out of all of us. I can honor who you are, right, as a human being, even though you're living a life that's completely different than I'm living. I can honor who I am with all of the struggles that I've faced, and still hold those struggles in in this space, but not let them define me. Not let going forward be defined by all of my things that I feel like hold me back. And that's really a lot of the work that you do, right? Unveiling the patterns that we have within us um, that define so much of our core wounds. Um,
I think that the patterns are the symptom
mm,
of the core wound, which is a belief system. That's all it really is. What happened to you happened.
mhm,
And unfortunately, you can't change that. But the thoughts and opinions about what you're making what happened mean about you,
mhm,
that is what's dictating your experience of you. And that's where the transformation is possible, is changing the belief about who you are and how
mhm,
you are seeing yourself in relation to what happened to you.
mhm,
And that, when you can reframe that for yourself and find evidence of a different truth, maybe
mhm,
there is a different truth available to you that is just as true as the one you've been believing, but
mhm,
might feel better to hold, and find evidence that there's potential truth there, then your experience of what happened to you and how you're holding it inside of you changes.
mm.
And that will then change how you're showing up in the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm curious about your path to this work. So, um, right there was the work that you were doing. You opened the gym, and then the pandemic gave you this gift of deep introspection, um, deep self-reflection. So how are you able to find that process within you? Because to be able to be that mirror and hold that up for other people, that requires deep inner work on your own part. So how did you do that?
I was deeply unhappy for a very, very, very long time, and I fought tooth and nail. And I was such a victim to what happened to me and to what I
Mhm.
had been through. And it wasn't doing me any good to be so angry
Mm,
at myself and the world. And I was offered an alternative. I did not do this on my own. I hired my own coach, and I had to fall into a deep pit of
mm,
despair in order to do that. That's what it took for me to reach out and ask for help. And I
mm,
did. And she offered me a different perspective and showed me how to find it for myself. And the more I did that, the more I saw that there were other truths available to me. I was holding on to one, and
mm,
that one truth I was holding on to was creating an experience that was very difficult. But if I allowed myself to open up the aperture enough to see that there were other options available to me of ways that I could look at my life, that they felt lighter.
mm,
And I think I have always been unafraid to go there. I think that's just in my personality where I want to understand myself better. I want to, even in the parts of myself that I am ashamed of, I want to explore those parts. And there's something so beautiful about fully embracing all of your parts and not just the parts that you deem to be worthy or
mhm,
um, presentable to the world.
mhm,
And the more I did it, the more at peace I became with who I am. And the more I was able to show up in society in a way that felt really good and authentic to me. And so it just kind of became a process of momentum,
mm,
but it started from a place of deep pain and suffering.
mm. Yeah. I think that there will be people that can relate to that. Um, out of the Phoenix Rising thing, like taking you down to the lowest part of who you are, and then finding the space within you to rise. And what does that look like? From our deepest wounds come our greatest resurrection. It's a powerful process. I commend you for leaning into that, because this work is not comfortable, and it requires a lot of reflection and vulnerability. And to put that out and then be that mirror for other people is um, a powerful process. So one of the pieces that, or one of the your work, I guess, that you do is the soul alignment coaching. Can you tell us a little bit? I know we've talked a little bit about it right now, but do you feel like the work? Well, let's talk about soul alignment coaching. Tell us what that is.
Sure. To me, what alignment means is recognizing your truth and living in line with it.
Mm,
So not hiding from how you feel and what you want, but recognizing how you feel and what you want and taking the steps to change it if the life that you've built for yourself is not fully authentic to the life that you want to be living,
mm,
or if the way that you feel every day is not how you want to feel, then it becomes a process of, okay, let's get really honest with how do you want to feel and what vision do you have for your life? Where are you now in relation to that? And what is blocking you from getting from where you are now to where you want to be? And that soul alignment coaching is a
mm,
process of uncovering what's blocking you. If there was nothing blocking you, you would already have it. It would already be in your reality. And so it's for those brave people who want to undergo a full transformational experience with me to step into a life that's fully in alignment with their true authentic self.
mm, mm. Wow, that takes a lot of bravery. Amanda and I did this work in a session about a week ago, and we're going to talk about what this looks like. But it is there's a lot that comes up, and it does require a shift. A shift happens, but it also requires you to face yourself in a new way. When we talk about working with the shadow and working with the harder parts of ourselves, the parts that we don't express to other people, the parts that we don't put on show when we're in a when we're in a group of people, it's facing a lot of those pieces. I'm curious, with your soul alignment coaching, do you ever work and get into the hypnosis piece, so accessing the subconscious mind?
I love that you just brought this up. I don't do hypnosis, but
Mm-hmm.
what the work that we did together is it's called the Higher Self Healing Portal, which is just a 1 hour session where I invite the client's soul self, their higher self, into my physical body so that they can have a conversation with their own consciousness, essentially. And the beauty of this experience is that where you might be hiding from your deepest truth, your higher self doesn't. And so your unconscious thoughts and belief systems that are driving your entire life that you don't have awareness of are brought right to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't do it through the modality of hypnosis, but I do it through the modality of trance channeling. But it's the same end result. It's to
Hmm.
understand what's going on at the deepest recesses of your mind, bringing it right up to your conscious awareness, because only from there can you begin to change it. You can't change what you don't know is there
Mm-hmm.
or find peace within it.
So, when did you decide that the trance channeling was the catalyst, I guess, for soul alignment coaching, as opposed to like different modalities? Because I know you're experienced in breath work and Reiki and um, psychic tuning in. Why is trance the way to do this, or why? What have you found to be kind of catalyzing with
Yeah,
trance?
there was never like an aha moment for me. It's really quite honestly been a journey of trusting what feels right,
Mm-hmm.
which is something that I never used to do. And it led me to a really deep, dark place. And I this trance channeling stuff, it just happened. I haven't been doing it for that long. I just started doing it in February of this year.
Mm-hmm.
And one day my guides were like, "You want to try it?" I was like, "Okay." And nothing had ever felt so effortless and easy to me before.
Wow.
And the process of doing it just feels good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just decided to lean in. And I started offering these sessions, and I recognize that they can be challenging on the receiving end when you're not used to being that open and vulnerable. But man, can they be super enlightening if you're open to it. And as a coach, as a life coach, accessing a client's unconscious awareness can be very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And this just you don't really have a choice. It's just brought to your attention. You have to be ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
But it allowed kind of an acceleration of the process. And so I
Mm-hmm.
just kind of leaned in and started going for it.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, and trance channeling it doesn't come without its risks for you as a practitioner, right? You have to really understand your space, your energy, what true grounding is, making sure you really understand the risks of inviting somebody's, um, you know, higher self into your vessel. Um, how the people that you've worked with, how has it accelerated their outcomes?
Most people come into a session with me expecting to get the answers
Mm,
because they're operating under an assumption, which is that there is an answer. And so they come in and they ask questions expecting to get an answer of some kind so that they know where to go next. And what tends to happen is they're asked, where do you want to go next? What answer would you like to hear?
hmm,
How would you like to feel? What are you afraid of? All the things that you're avoiding asking yourself, all of those answers are available to you right here and now.
Mm-hmm.
But you never stop to ask because you're scared to ask. And so what ends up happening is it's sort of an unraveling of the ego's desire for control,
Mm-hmm.
which is what you come in expecting. And instead, what you're being shown is that the power lies inside of you to choose
Mm-hmm.
and to trust in your choices, in what you want and what's possible for you. And I think that when you're not used to looking at yourself as the source of your own strength and power, that
Mm-hmm.
can be a little bit confronting and surprising. But I think that that's the biggest thing that people take away is, wow, there is no one option for me. There is no right or wrong choice for me. I get to determine that for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it forces you to reevaluate how you've been giving that power away up until
Mm-hmm.
now.
Yeah, I think that's the one of the soapboxes that I stand on is the idea that this spiritual, I don't even want to call it industry, but the many modalities that people practice, there's so much good in a lot of it, but there's so much that challenges the power that we have as sovereign spiritual beings, right? So many people want to be told what's happening with their relationships or what's happening with this, and they do that by giving this power away to other people when really deep down you have access to all of this information right now.
Yeah.
And then if we turn the light on in our own world, we have access to that in the here and now. Now, based on the work that you and I did, it is a little harder when they are belief patterns that are in your subconscious, and tapping into those belief patterns that aren't always readily available, but do manifest in everything in your world. So I do feel like this work is very catalyzing for, long-term growth for people. Because I know for myself, it shows up in every area of my life, not just why is this happening? And that's what this work did for me. So maybe this is a good transition to kind of move into what it looked like for me. So the reading was about 50 or 60 minutes long. And Amanda she went into trance. She was in trance. I guess I should maybe give you an opportunity to talk about your process as well. And she had spent some time in meditation and doing some deep grounding work prior to this, before she welcomed in my higher self into her physical vessel. And then it was an opportunity for me to have a conversation with my higher self through Amanda. So it was kind of a wild experience. And I'll talk about kind of what came up. But the interesting thing for me, having done a lot of hypnosis and I'm a regular meditator. I've meditated regularly for about the last 15 years, was the the thing about consciousness and the stream of consciousness is it's moving at a rate that's so much faster than our logical brain. And when she was in trance, that is what was coming through for me. So while it was confronting and the issues were confronting, my logical brain was just like on the slow pace. Like it just felt like she was moving really fast, and I was like, I don't even know how to answer what you're saying to me, because it just wasn't. I was having a hard time keeping up, and I know when I can get into that stream of consciousness when I meditate or when I channel, I know that it just comes through so fast. So I knew that that's what was happening because that was my awareness of it. But I know that sometimes that can feel so really misaligned for people, when they may feel like there's a disconnect, or there's like something, like what's happening. Like I think you were saying the word confronting. There were confronting issues for me. but things that I seriously I could not, it felt like I was a brand new baby learning this for the first time. And I'm like, I don't even, it feels like you're talking Greek to me. Like, it just felt so, um, it felt so foreign to me. Um, but the piece that was helpful for me was when I closed my eyes and really put my hand on my heart. And then I was able to kind of move into this kind of on the same wavelength as you, that felt like I was really tapping into the experience through you. So it is really an interesting ride. It was an interesting ride. So let's talk a little bit about what came up for me. Oh, I'm sorry, did you want to
No,
say
I
something?
just thank you so much for sharing that. That was very insightful and
Hmm.
very interesting for me to hear that reflection.
Yeah. Yeah. So the core wound that came up for me, and really this was so interesting because it didn't come up in a way that was like, oh, I'm really struggling with the love I have for myself. No, it doesn't come up that way. It comes up, it shows up in every area of your life. And for me, the way that it was showing up was through all the mundane tasks that I have to do for my family. And it sounds really silly, I'm sure, but um, I was feeling very overwhelmed and very much unappreciated. And all of these tasks, laundry, dishes, the running around, all of the things that I was just feeling so unappreciated for led me deep straight into the core wound, which was feeling like everyone's love for me is very conditional. And really that's the truth of that is that's how we're designed. We are designed as human beings to be, um, we can't give unconditional love to each other. We can try, but we can't. And so the reflection was that, um, the the love that I'm lacking in the love that I have for myself. And I know I'm not using the right word, but let me just come up to speed a little bit. So the love that I have access to within me, outside of me, sourcing within me is infinite. It's ongoing without end. But I was not tapping into that. So it was leaving me sad and shut down and unworthy of the one emotion that transcends space and time. You know, when we're without a physical body, what is left? Love. Love is what is left. Love, though, is also how you show up in the world. It's how you care for yourself, how you feel about yourself, how you move through limiting beliefs and patterns. And that was huge for me as through Amanda, it's being shown to me that these patterns are all through the lens of love and self-love. And with that, what has shifted for me, a lot has shifted, but what has shifted for me is learning how to lead with love. The idea that love was at the root of all of these frustrations that I was having. What has shifted for me is, okay, that stuff doesn't get done. It doesn't have to do it's okay. It's okay that I don't feel appreciated with those things. It simply like kind of put the fire out for me. It put the fire out. It shifted the lens on the patterns and the beliefs I have around feeling unworthy that somebody isn't appreciating me for these specific things. Like this is a deep wound. This is not just surface. It doesn't have to do with laundry and dishes and running around, but the core wound is a lot deeper than that. So the root cause, right? The root cause, of really all of our biggest complaints and frustrations, right, in life, um, have to do with how these unhealthy patterns really show up, and why we feel triggered and why there's things that you feel like tap dance on your last nerve. They really are the root, like the core wound root. And it's about uncovering what that is, the shadow of that. And this, you guys, felt so foreign to me. I was like, I don't know what that feels like. I don't know what it feels like to access that didn't feel real and something that I have known and know what that it just felt completely foreign to me. So learning how to express that within how I show up in the world, and also how to source that daily for myself. When I look in the mirror, being kinder to myself, showing myself the ministry of just the words that flow through my head. Sounds silly, but the words that flow through my head, and having an awareness that they were so damaging to me over all of these years, so damaging to me, and having an awareness and reframing what that looks like, reframing that narrative that has just beat me down for so long, and then, there were tears that came up for me. And I love tears because tears mean truth. Tears are where I've gotten to the root of what's truthful for me. And it was powerful for me because I knew what felt so foreign to me for 15 minutes. I'm like, I'm having a hard time answering some of these questions. Like Amanda would ask back, sorry, as my higher self would ask back, and I wouldn't know how to answer some of these questions because it was like, I feel like you're speaking a language I don't understand. And then the tears came, and then it felt like it was like a somatic experience. Like my body was feeling it then. So it wasn't just what's happening in my head, then my body was integrating it. And that's when the tears came. So the channeling, though, which is interesting to me, was the disconnect I felt between not just how confronting it felt, but how it almost felt like I am not on the same wavelength. Like, what is happening? Like, this feels so strange to me. But because of the work that I've done in hypnosis and meditation, I knew that Amanda was on a wavelength that I had to get there. I had to get there. And as soon as I could get close to where she was streaming this, higher self, because it is like a fast channel, that's when things started to kind of align and move forward for me and make changes in my body. To me, I do have to say, that night and then the next day, it was this weird like push and pull. I'd be really tired and then I'd be wide awake, and then I couldn't sleep that night. I think I was up to like 1 a.m. And then I was just like, I felt like I'd been dosed with caffeine for about 24 hours. And then I slept for 15 hours. It was just, there was a lot repatterning happening. So I think what's really important to talk about is the awareness that has come out of it for me. When we can recognize and have an awareness of not just the core wound, that's going to be a lifelong thing for me, right? But an awareness of the thoughts, and that this thing, which is my mind that I'm pointing to, is not informing my heart over and over and over again. The mind tells us these stories, and having this awareness that I can show up differently, and that I can repattern and unpattern and unweave these illusions that I've created around limiting beliefs and patterns that haven't supported me. So it was very powerful. It was, the work requires you to really sit in a space that's uncomfortable. You have to learn to drop your ego. Your ego will be front and center. That is something I learned. Like, it's going to come in and say, oh no, you don't need to do this. You're fine. And once you step aside and say, get in the back seat, I'm driving. Um, that's when the real work begins. So thank you for your time and your energy and this work. It's very, very powerful. And I think when the people are ready, they will appear, and it will create lasting change for people.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. That was so open and vulnerable. And I think that just to give a little inside baseball on kind of my experience of what it feels like when I'm
Mhm.
trance channeling is before the session, I will get into meditation and I will set the space and create the boundaries and do all my protection work. And then I will invite forward the higher self of the individual that I will be speaking to. Every soul has its own vibrational frequency, and it's helpful for me to get a feel for what that is first before I invite them inside. And oh, your soul was just so powerful. I remember telling you that, and I think that's a testament to the work that you've done on yourself and the things that you've been through and the space that you hold for other people. And she did tell me that you were going to be challenged quite a bit, but that you were ready, you wanted that. And so I had an understanding of kind of where it was going to go, but you showed up so beautifully and authentically and vulnerably, and it was just a pleasure for me to kind of, my consciousness is kind of in the back. It's kind of like I'm sitting there just witnessing it unfold. And when my energy blends with the higher self that I'm channeling, it almost feels like it's me talking. So I'm not aware that it's happening at an accelerated pace.
Mhm.
Um, but I can
Yes.
understand how that would feel for the person on the receiving end of that. And that is true. I do feel like that you're receiving information that is so unconscious that you're hearing it for the first time, and it's you're having trouble keeping up with it because it's so new. And I really appreciated that reflection. That was really incredible.
Yeah, and I think it's an important distinction if people are gonna watch this or interested in doing this work, that maybe haven't spent a lot of time with their subconscious mind, that it can go very fast, and there can be a disconnect. But it is very powerful and very catalyzing. So lean in. That's what I would recommend. Lean in, because it is really for your best. When I've done channeling too, Amanda, your experience is very similar to how because I'll do voice memos where I'll channel, and it is like I can't often even understand what I'm saying because it is coming through so fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I knew that. I'm like, whoa, I need to get on board here because I am not on the same. We are not in the same wavelength. So
You have to watch
um,
it back a couple times and be like,
yes,
"Okay, I missed 70% of this. I was
yeah,
stuck I was stuck on the thing that she said in the first 5 minutes, and I kind of missed the next 30 minutes, and I have to go back
yes.
and so each
Well, and the
rewatch.
ego too, right? I mean, the
Yeah.
ego just it wants to step in so much of our work that we do to heal. And healing's ongoing, but as we move through some of these shadow parts of ourselves, the ego wants to step in and say, I got this handled. What are you doing? This is not, um, you're fine. You're fine. Everything's good. But when we let go, and we surrender to that moment, it can be very triggering. And it was for me. It was triggering. I didn't want to hear some of the things that were reflected back to me. But I became more in the flow and open to the possibilities when I let go of what my ego was holding on to. So I'm curious for you, how do you hold your ego in check? Ego is it's such an important part of who we are as humans, and how it keeps us safe, it keeps us alive, but it holds a hard spot in this work if we don't keep it in check. So how do you keep your ego in check?
That's such a loaded and fantastic question. And I would love to answer this with my perspective on what I believe the ego to be.
Mhm.
And for me, the ego is the part of your consciousness that separates self from what is not self,
Mm.
right? It creates an awareness around what you are and separates you from that which is not you. And as soon as you, and part of the point in coming here in my belief system is to have that experience, because when we're
Mm.
not on the earth plane, we're all one singular consciousness kind of
Mhm.
um, that's kind of the way in which we exist. And we come here to experience separation. But as soon as you are experiencing yourself as separate from everyone else, along with that comes the need to defend and protect.
Mhm.
And that's where the ego gets a bad rep, is that it feels like it has to protect and defend itself. And so for me, rather than keeping my ego in check, it's understanding that I don't have to.
Mm.
And it's uncovering where I'm feeling like I need to defend and protect myself, where that's coming from, based on past experiences I've had, based on the stories I'm telling myself about those past experiences and who I am as a byproduct of them, where I'm feeling insecure within myself that I have to protect that part that I am rejecting or
Mhm.
ashamed of, and then creating acceptance
Mm.
around that part and showing that part love so that I no longer feel the need to protect and defend it.
Mm.
And when the ego is a good thing, having a very integrated sense of self is important. But when you're showing up from a place of insecurity, the ego feels like it has to protect and defend itself constantly,
Mhm.
and that's when you can create disempowering patterns as a result of that, or feel a way in your life that doesn't feel empowering.
Mhm.
Um, and so for me, the work becomes creating love and acceptance for every part of me so that I no longer feel the need to protect and defend those parts.
Mm. Yeah, that's really incredible. I mean, the part of our brain, the reptilian part of our brain that is the fight or flight response when we're, not safe or in a traumatic situation. It's really just that. It's only for that. So, right, the ego, um, we're looking at how the ego plays a role. It when we are triggered or step into that moment or that time when we're re-feeling some of those traumatizing emotions, that's when that reptilian, the amygdala, goes to work and says, ugh, this isn't safe. You need to get out of this place. It's not for you. We're re-experiencing those emotions. And that's really when our ego goes, oh, I got it. I take it. You know, I'm in the driver's seat now. I'm gonna take the wheel and drive. So I think that's an important distinction to make, and even the work that you do too, making sure that that's holding space for the ego, but also making sure that the work that you do um, is front and center. So I'm curious, when you are channeling, are you clairaudient, clairvoyant, clairsentient? Are you seeing things when you channel? Are you hearing things? What does that look like for you?
It's another great question. Um, the clairs that you're talking about, they to me, they're all parts of the same thing, and
Mhm.
they do kind of work in tandem with one another. So
Mhm.
when I'm specifically trance channeling, I'm feeling the sensations of the spirit body inside of me because it has
Mm.
a vibration. I'm also sensing the emotional experiences of the client in front of me. I get a sense of when they're guarded, when they're open,
Mm.
when they're
Mm.
confused, when they're angry or upset. And I
Mm.
also can understand what they're thinking.
Mm.
Sometimes, not all the time, but if there's like a thought in their mind, I get a sense usually what that is, especially if it's pertinent.
Mm.
And then on top of that, sometimes, not always, but sometimes I will see visuals of the messages that are being translated through me. And
Mm.
so it's kind of many different like all of the clairs kind of working together in tandem with one another.
Wow. Is that overwhelming for you?
Honestly, it feels so natural. It
Mm,
really, really does. And the only part that's a little bit confusing that I've had to understand in time is that um, the the awareness that I have is not mine.
mm-hmm,
It's the soul that I'm channeling. It's their awareness in my
mm-hmm,
head.
mm-hmm.
So sometimes it's difficult for me to differentiate what is me from what is not me. And so when the session is over, sometimes I will be like, I don't know if I gave them anything. Like, I don't know if they got anything from that. Was there any new information there? Because I forget that it wasn't my awareness, but it felt like my awareness. And
Yes.
so sometimes I will rewatch a session of a
Mm.
channeling session I did and be like, oh, I don't remember any of that
Uh-huh.
when I thought I did.
Yes.
So there's a bit of like my perception is skewed a little bit.
So I'm curious though, is that your ego coming in trying to validate and um, what's the word? Validate and like sensationalize your experience to give you that feeling of I did this right. I mean, I know in psychic development work, it's very important to make sure that you're, dialed in and making sure that you're doing the work that
That is the
is
craft, right?
it is. Yes.
It's being able to completely disassociate so I'm not getting in the way. Like my ego is not
Right.
getting in the way. And that
Hmm.
is going to take practice for me to be like,
Right.
okay, shh, shh, shh.
Right.
It's not your
Right.
turn. And just
Sure.
let it come through and trust.
Mm-hmm.
And that is going to be a work in progress for me.
Sure.
in
Yeah.
So yes, I think to answer your question, yes, there is a part of self-judgment and ego getting in the way and be like, you're not doing a good job, kind of in the back of my mind, when it's not for me to say if I'm doing a good job or not,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
to answer your question, yes, I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. That's an important distinction. So Brene Brown, popular social worker and researcher on vulnerability and shame, um, talks about her research. She's written many books, but her research specifically talks about choosing courage over comfort. And she says this specific quote: "Only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light." As you personally learn to continue showing up for yourself and then now for others, how has this been true for you?
It's a beautiful quote. And I think it's very true. And the thing that I've learned the most is that the darkness is an illusion. And the
Mm,
more work I've done on myself, I've realized that there is no darkness. There's only light. It is the way I was holding my own thoughts and opinions about who I am that was creating the darkness.
mm,
And once I was able to recognize that that was not necessarily true, then there was only light left. It really comes down to acceptance of all that is. And once you can reach that place of full self acceptance, unconditional self acceptance, then you see that it's all good, it's all welcome, and there's only light. Even in the tough times,
mhm,
there can be love, gratitude, and self acceptance within those times too.
mm,
And that you're here, you're part of your human experience is to have all of it.
mhm,
That has allowed me to open up to my truth, which is that the darkness is just the, the version of yourself that you haven't fully accepted yet.
mm. So looking back to March 2020 and then all the time prior to that in your life, all the experiences that led up to March of 2020. And then now, here we are in 2023 and then into the future. How do you feel like that time what has your growth been like, and how do you feel like that time up until that point and then this time going forward has informed your life in a way that has allowed you to become the best version of yourself? Right. Or do you feel like you're living that best version of yourself now?
I feel like I am
Mm-hmm.
because I'm the happiest that I've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that there are things that I don't regret or that are not going well for me. It's just that I have chosen to embrace it all. And I believe that I had to get lost in the humanness for
Mm-hmm.
35 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to experience a loss of sense of self and a complete disconnect from who I was and who I wanted to be in the world around me. I had to experience the darkness, so to speak, so that I could find myself inside of that and come to the realization that there is only light for me. Um, and I could only get to where I am now because of where I came from.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to have the full spectrum of both experiences has allowed me to embrace who I am now with full acceptance, because I would not be who I am now if I didn't experience a previous version of myself.
Yeah. Um, so I'm curious, are you a reader?
What do you mean by that?
Do you do a lot of reading? Like, do you like to read books?
Oh, I didn't
A
know if you were
reader,
talking about
not a
psychic
psychic
reading.
reader. I'm sorry.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are you reading right now?
Um, Journey of Souls
Oh,
is one of
yes.
my favorite books,
Mm-hmm.
and The Untethered Souls, a new one that
Michael
I've been
Singer.
reading. Yeah.
Yes. It's a
Beau
wonderful book. Yes.
Beautiful book.
Yes.
Yeah. Those
Yes.
are the
I've
two that I
so Michael Newton is the Journey of Souls, right?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Michael Singer is uh, the Untethered Soul. I listened to that on
Yeah.
audiobook. Oh, it is, yeah, touched me in deep ways. So wonderful. I like to ask that question.
Yeah.
So, how do you find balance and joy in your life with this work and the work you've done and your ongoing work? How do you find that? What does that look like for you?
Presence.
Mm,
And what I mean by that is we tend to mentally get caught up in past experiences or future experiences, and it just completely takes us out of the present moment. And the only time where joy, peace, love is available for you is in the now. It can only
mhm,
be accessed now. It can't be accessed in the past, and it can't be accessed in the future. And so having designated times throughout my day where I bring myself into the present moment and anchor into the abundance of peace, joy, love that's available for me right now has become a grounding exercise for me. And it can be as simple as like putting my work down for a second, taking three
mhm,
deep breaths, and like looking around at my life, like my dog, my husband, this
mhm,
beautiful house I live in, and
mhm,
feeling the gratitude available to me within that.
mm. Yeah, I think it's so important to engage your senses, right? We are so consumed by doing.
Yes.
Culture is so consumed by doing. We have so much to do, our to-do lists, and we really miss the opportunity to just be present. And it sounds very trite, but when you practice what you were just saying, it really opens up so much in your life. Um, I was outside yesterday with my dogs, and there was a slight breeze, and I just paused and I thought, I can feel the coolness on my face, and it's kind of rustling my hair. And I just kind of got immersed in this moment. And it just, to be here and now in your physical body is such an important distinction as we move through this fast paced, technology focused life. So, what does self care look like for you?
Finding acceptance within every experience that I'm having, the good and the bad, and learning to trust in life
Mm,
and anchor into the knowing that it's all going to work out. Everything is going to be okay. I don't need to control everything.
Mm,
I can take my foot off the gas and I can just be in the present moment
mm,
without feeling this urge to change it or to mold it or control it into any which way. Essentially, what are you working for if you can't enjoy the present moment? This is
mm,
all there ever is. And to me, that has been the biggest piece of self-care for me, is giving myself permission to not constantly be chasing something,
mhm,
but finding finding what I'm looking for in a future achievement now, because
mm.
it's going to be only available to you now. And that has been a game changer for me.
Wow. Yeah, letting go, right? Letting go of what you think the outcome should be,
Yeah.
right? And flowing, surrendering, allowing just what's happening to show up, not directing every little last thing, just being here now.
Yeah. That's a process in of itself,
It
as someone like
is.
me who's a control
It
freak
is.
and is constantly has a to-do list, but like letting that go and like anchoring into unconditional self-acceptance, not acceptance
Mm,
for when I achieve the thing that I believe will give it
mm.
to me. That's been a big one.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, you're like a poster child for those people that do live that life that needs to have all the T's crossed and the I's dotted, and I've got an appointment here and there, and right, and that is a lot of us. I mean, I think we live in a time when we just crave to be busy, and when we're not busy, it's scary because I remember I have all those things I have to do, and really, because I think it's hard for people to sit with themselves.
Hmm.
How many times I ask people, do you get quiet? Is there any moment for you to get quiet in your day? Oh, I'm afraid of what is I'm going to hear. I'm afraid of what it's going to look like, or I'm afraid of what, right? No judgment, no judgment. It's a scary place, I think, for people. And I think that's why it perpetuates more busyness.
Yeah, it's the judgment that's the scary part. It's
Hmm.
the judgment of the experience, right? Otherwise, it's just an experience.
Correct. Yeah. Neutral.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
yeah, it's what we put to it. So this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for taking the time to come around these wonderful ideas. How can people find you?
Yeah, my website, amandalaurenblau.com. And then I'm the same on all social media, Amanda Lauren Blau on YouTube, Amanda Lauren Blau on Instagram, and then Amanda Lauren Blau on TikTok.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, that's neat. I'll have to check you out. That sounds good. Um, I'll make sure and link that all in the show notes so people can find you. So I like to part with what is your unique parting wisdom to our community? What is your grounded guidance? Something that you would like to share with the audience, and we'll end there.
I think I'd like to share one of the biggest things that I have learned from channeling people's souls,
Mm,
which is that we come for to your soul's perspective. You're coming into this life to experience it. There are
mhm,
no expectations of you. There is no good, bad, right, wrong outcome. Your soul is here to experience all of it. And you are being given the power of choice. And there is no right choice and there is no wrong choice. You can make a choice and backtrack and choose a different one. To your soul, it's all perfect. You are
mm,
perfect. And everything that you're experiencing is perfect. And if you can hold that as your North Star, then it
mm,
kind of takes the pressure off and allows you to fully open up to whatever it is you're experiencing in this moment, which is exactly what your soul is desiring.
mm. Thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us today on the Grounded Guidance podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to our podcast and leaving a review. Your feedback helps us reach more curious minds like yours. Until next time, stay grounded, stay guided, and keep stretching your edges to think differently. Take care, my friends.